Hello, everybody. Once again, it is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. Thank you so very much for watching. Hit the subscribe, the like, the share, leave a comment, everything we normally talk about. Special issue tonight, a special edition tonight, a special episode of the show. Chris, welcome back, man. It's been a day or two since we've talked, and a lot's happened in the past couple of months since we've actually talked, and the big news around the world, as far as what we're being told, is Russia going to invade the Ukraine? This, like everything, is economics.
Right. Well, first I want to say, Barry, thanks a lot for having me back on your show. It's
Always a pleasure, man.
It's been a minute. But as you know, and maybe your audience knows or doesn't know, that economics controls all. Okay, first and foremost. So if you want to take a look at things from an economic standpoint, all right, say for instance, Russia wanted to invade Ukraine. Okay, of course, Ukraine is not a NATO. It's not NATO affiliated.
Right.
Okay, so we're actually backing the Ukraine. I'm not sure who else is backing Ukraine, but we're backing Ukraine.
Okay.
And then also on the other front, the China-Taiwan thing. Okay. China possibly invading Taiwan.
Right.
Kind of like, Russia invading Ukraine.
Right.
Now, who's to sit there and say that China and Russia hadn't gotten together and said, on two fronts, let's do something so we can draw the United States in, right?
I've written down the notes of things I was going to ask, and the last thing because we haven't talked about, what the last thing I've got is Russia, China coming together, removing the threats, cutting the head off of NATO by taking the US out. Is there a possibility that's all been discussed? And obviously you think it has.
Right. Well, if I thought about it, then they've definitely thought about it, right?
Right. I mean, you look at the geography, you look at all the aspects of it, the geography of it, the social aspect of it, as our society is a lot different than Russian society and a whole lot different than Chinese society. All the aspects, and it all comes back to economics.
Right. Right. So just like bin Laden did, right? His whole plan when he attacked the United States was for us to go back over to Afghanistan and Iraq or whatever, but to drain us economically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was the plan.
Right.
So what makes you think that you getting a war on two fronts, China and Russia, the two big boys on the block, supposedly, versus the United States, to draw us into two separate wars. Right. That's going to cost us even more economic.
Exactly. Right? And that's why I wanted to do this episode, because so many people have the attitude of, well, what happens in Russia or what happens in Ukraine really doesn't impact us, and what happens in Taiwan, well, that really doesn't impact us. If we are fighting a basic two-front world war, as we have already done once in the past 100 years, twice in the past 100 years, we've already seen the economic strains that come with that.
Right. And so, of course, China,
I mean,
Russia,
we weren't alive then, but you can look back and if you had relationships with your parents and grandparents, what those times were like, and we don't want to go through that.
Right, right. And the whole thing about it is that China, Russia saw what bin Laden did. And they're like, well, you know what? if he can do that, guess what we can do? We can come together and devise a plan, right?
Mhm.
And um,
And we might have the perfect president for them to pull it off, because um, I don't know um, how steely of a spine, let's say, Joe Biden might have if push came to shove.
right, right, and you know what? I was talking to one of my buddies. He was in 10th Special Forces group, and he said, you know, the whole thing doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and I'm just like, I know it doesn't make sense, but what makes sense is them trying to drain us economically. That's the point
Mhm.
where I'm going with this, is the economics of it.
Because
So
from reports I saw right before we came on, it seems like the biggest weapon we have against Russia is the threat of cutting them off from a top secret, top security internet that all the financial institutions use. So our major weapon against them is going to be economic, just like their strategies against us would be economic, despite the fact that the war, the killing, the death, those are all distractions.
right, exactly. And once again, everything is based upon economics because economics controls all.
Yeah, it's never about people, it's always about profits.
There you go.
Yeah,
There it is.
yeah.
Right.
And um again, we talk on here about things that other platforms, other shows, other media doesn't talk about. We're not hearing anything about all the coups that have been going on around the world, and you know, we're not. We've done our own. We've played a part in a lot of coups. The United States is not without blood and mud on our hands from participating in coups, but it seems like Russia is um, being aggressive. Is that a fair statement?
Well, you saw what happened in Burkina Faso. I hope your audience paid attention to what was happening in Burkina Faso, where they just had a coup and they arrested the president. Right. The thing about that coup is when it comes to their natural resources, right? But they always say it's about terrorism. I tell your audience a lot of times that when countries come in and say, you know, we're performing a counterterrorism mission, all right, it's really what we call a cover for action,
Right.
right? Because we're always concerned. We're not we, but a lot of governments are really concerned about the natural resources because the natural resources is what funds their economy.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? We have like a lot of lithium, cobalt, uranium, whatever. That fuels their country.
Iridium is one of the new elements that is a necessity for a lot of high-tech electronics, and it's going to be a source of war eventually, as all natural resources are, because it all comes back to economics.
Right. And once again, um, that's that's the key. All right, that's the name of the game. So when I was in Mali in 2019. All right, I remember that I was there trying to do business with their government, but the government pretty much collapsed. All right. In that, um, I remember the French were there, you know, performing their counterterrorism mission to get rid of uh, ISIS and AQ and whomever else terrorist
Mhm.
groups were there. But
The real
they,
purpose of France being there was
to get the natural resources, because the people well, I was in Bamako at the time, but they had news reports in Cadel that the people there wanted the French out because they were actually getting the resources, the natural resources, when in fact, you know, they were that was their whole, that was their function. It was to get the natural resource. Okay, they might kill a terrorist here or there, put it on the news, make it look like they're really doing something, but in all actuality, what are they doing? They're there to get the natural resources. And anytime I hear about a counterterrorism mission, right, especially in Africa, there's always something there: oil, gas, natural resources. It's all natural resources. It doesn't matter. Okay. If you really think it's about human beings saving their lives and all that stuff, you're sadly mistaken. You really are. So even in what country is that? Well, that was Mozambique, right? Wagner Group was there, and they're not like really good at unconventional warfare, regular warfare. So they went there and they were guarding the total oil, right? And they were protecting total oil so the insurgents didn't come in and start tearing things up. But their function was to help, prevent the insurgency. But they really didn't know anything. They were there for the natural resources, and then they left. Okay, so then you see what's going on in Mali right now. They had, the coup, and right now the guy that's running the country has brought Wagner Group in over the French, and they're going to pretty much kick the French out.
And the Wagner Group is Russian affiliated.
Right. That's a Russian affiliated. I believe they're with the Russian security service. There's a strong affiliation with the Russian security service. I think it's FSB. Something I can't recall, but they're affiliated with them. So now you got Wagner Group going in and kind of pushing the French out. So now you're cutting them out of their money, right? And they're going to do the same thing in Burkina Faso. It's going to be the same thing. So now what happens, when you got another country coming in, when you've been there, and they're going to take over and they're pushing you out? What's that do to you economically? You see?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now it's starting to hurt your economics.
Exactly.
Right. So you start messing with my money. This is like a gangster mentality type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens? All right, they're messing with our money. What are we going to do to get back at them? You see? So,
and are the cyber attacks, are these the ways that non-violently countries come at each other?
Of course. It's just, okay, you did this to us, well, we're going to do this to you.
Right.
So, but then you still have other countries like Senegal, okay, and
Ivory Coast.
Right, exactly, the Ivory Coast, which are also Francophone countries, and they also support France, or France supports them. Now, lately, there's been some talks of insurgent activity or terrorist activity coming from, these groups, from AQ and whatever, who knows? But the French are there, and I know they're there for their natural resources, because I'd gone to the embassy, their embassy in DC, and met with the defense attaché in reference to, my company doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember defense attaché was telling me, how the French were there. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're there, huh? And I found that the French built them a counterterrorism school and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I see where this is going, right?
Yeah. So the next step is the Wagner Group comes in and kicks the French out of, we watch and see them come kick the French out of Senegal and Ivory Coast.
Right. So, they're there for their natural resources too. Right.
And China is also trying to make incursions into Africa for natural resources. Is that not correct too?
China's been there.
Right.
China's been there. They're the biggest loan sharks.
We've got an incredible amount of debt to China, do we not? The United States government?
We do. We do.
Yeah.
But these African countries are like really into debt to them. So like China pretty much owns them, you see.
Hmm.
And even when I was there in Nigeria, I was like, man, there are a lot of Chinese people here in Nigeria, tons of Chinese people here in Nigeria, but they're all doing business with the government. Although a lot of it was due to, was the mining.
Hmm.
Nigeria's got a lot of minerals, but Nigeria's got a lot of uranium as well. So the Chinese were, um, I had information that the Chinese were digging for uranium, and who knows what they were doing with that uranium? Who knows? But they're there for the natural resources, nothing else. Yeah, they're there for business, but bottom line is the natural resources, which converts to big money.
Yep.
So
Especially scarce materials that are used for most of the objects that are crucial to our lives nowadays.
right, exactly. So those are things that we need, and a lot of these governments and companies are going in there and getting what they need to, further their agendas. They really are.
What's the is there a risk of we've got to watch all the things that we've been talking about here, but I want to go back to macro since we're talking everything's economics, the big scale. Is there a risk of Russia and China, which I think there is? So let me rephrase it. How big of a risk is it that Russia and China actually do team up, and what's the percentage that they could be successful in basically cutting the throat of the United States and bleeding us dry?
Percentage wise, 80%.
80% chance that it might happen?
Yeah. Easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
what's the percentage chance of success? Even higher?
you know what? Maybe 75%.
Okay.
75%. As you can see, what happened in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
right? You see what happened in Afghanistan. Um, we lost to a bunch of guys in flip flops and PJs, right? We had all the technology in the world,
That's the optics. That's what the whole world saw.
right?
Same thing happened to us that happened to Russia before us, and happened to anybody that's tried to take Afghanistan.
Right. We had all the technology, and we still lost to a bunch of guys in flip flops and PJs and sandals, right?
Mhm.
So it's really, in that type of warfare, it's not about the technology, because in a regular warfare, it's the most primitive form of fighting there is. So that's, it's
Wow.
that's like real grunt level stuff.
Okay.
Not logical stuff. Go ahead.
I wrote a book, my latest novel, and it's based upon a group wanting to take over the world. And I wrote it like 6 years ago, before anything that has been happening has happened. And in the book, I talk about one of the crucial points is to make sure as many military personnel are out of the country before a coup is attempted within the country. Would not our internal defenses be incredibly weakened by trying to fight a war with China over Taiwan, and a war with Russia over the Ukraine? Wouldn't the military become dilapidated, or not depleted fairly quickly?
Well, here's the thing, right? You still have the National Guard, okay? You have troops out of like EUROCOM, right? They're still over there, but you have troops, like the 82nd Airborne, whomever else that are going to be quickly deployed over to those areas, right? But your internal security, that's your police, okay? And that's the ones that are actually to be held responsible to deal with any type of coup, because it's an internal security matter. So the police, like I said, that's your internal security, are going to be tasked to put that down more so than the military.
And then the question becomes, how many of those police officers would actually be in favor of the coup?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's the big question. You know what I'm saying? Because also you still have the military members that still have the same mindset. You have to keep that in mind, right?
Yeah.
So,
man, this country is in a precarious situation.
right. So
One little misstep can set off a whole domino effect of really bad stuff.
true, very true. So, it's like one big giant chessboard,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to find out who's the best chess player.
And you better be playing chess, not checkers.
Right. And eventually it's going to be checkmate here with,
Somewhere by somebody.
right. And
if it's not us doing it, it's being done to us.
Right. And, keep in mind, while we're being drawn away from those, to Ukraine and Taiwan, Taliban and Al Qaeda and ISIS still want to launch attacks here in the United States. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's focused on this country and that country, while AQ, ISIS, and I just read a report not too long ago. The Taliban, their leadership said they wanted 2,000 suicide bombers to launch attacks in DC. So you have all those internally displaced persons, refugees that come to the United States that haven't been actually properly vetted,
that have a relative that has been killed by the United States, and they're here for revenge.
Right. And you have to understand that in Muslim Arabic culture, in the Quran, it's align balign with sin with Bali Islam, and it's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So they're going to exact their vengeance. Okay.
They're very patient.
Right. Time is on their side. You don't, you can react or you can respond. Right. You have those two choices. These people choose to respond. They're not going to react immediately. They'll respond, and then it'll take their time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take a look at that as well.
Okay. Back to the Ukraine. According to reports, 100,000 Russian troops amassed on the border of Ukraine, and they've got the Ukraine basically surrounded on three sides. From a logistical standpoint, you don't move that many assets into a situation unless you're planning to invade or force a coup from within to establish a puppet government favorable to Russia.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I just read not too long ago that I think Ukraine's next president, so-called, is supposed to be pro-Russian, just like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they get a pro-Russian, I guess, president, then we'll see what happens. But I think that's what they're trying to do.
Okay. As always, thank you so much for coming on here, sharing your expertise, sharing your stories, your experiences, your knowledge, and we'll have to do it again here real soon.
Yeah, we certainly will. And thank you very much for having me on your show. It's great.
Anything before we go? Anything we're missing? Israel and Palestine, they're always going to be.
That's always going to be. I told you, every time we talk, they constantly go at it. So nothing new there, right?
All right, man. Hey, thank you so much. I wish you nothing but peace and blessings, and safety and health. We're in a dark world, man. Love you. Thank you.
Okay, you take care now.
All right. Thank you. Hey, thank you all for watching. It's the American Doofus Show. Powerful episode. Please hit the share, hit the subscribe, hit the like, and leave a comment. Thank you all so much. American Doofus Show. Love you all. Don't be a doofus.